How's it going, my brothers? Great to have you here on this festive UFC 295 breaking news day. This was a bit unexpected, I've got to be honest with you. And what we had overnight that took place, Jon Jones pulled out of his title fight, his title defense against Stipe Miocic. And what really was the most shocking thing to me was Miocic. He wasn't up for any of the interim talk here, apparently, because as Dana White has now revealed, what we have is an interim belt. Remember, folks, there can only be one champion unless there is an interim champion. And in this case, we have in steps the backup fighter, Sergei Pavlovich, who has been steamrolling opposition, and he's going to face Tom Aspinall on short notice. I believe 2 weeks to be exact. We're getting close, and I'm excited for it. I know you are, and you look at the betting lines as well. You see Tom Aspinall opening up as the plus 105 betting underdog, and you have Sergei Pavlovich as a slight favorite, and we need to dig a little bit more deeper here because we also have to take a look at now the main event of the evening, which happens to be Yuri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira. And that the ante has been raised. We are upping the ante here. I got to be honest, a little disappointed that we're not going to be able to see Jon Jones take on Stipe Miocic. I was heavily on Jon Jones in that matchup, and now it's interesting here because you see that Jon Jones was injured, and they actually had the video footage from inside the ring. I believe he was in there with Walt Harris. He was in there with a sparring partner, and he ended up tearing a tendon off of his pectoralis major muscle, I believe. And he's going to be on the shelf now for 8 months or so. I believe Kevin Nicholson, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to Kevin Nicholson's channel, I know that he's done great work as a physical therapist and as someone in the medical field who has a word or two to say about the injuries sustained by Jon Jones. And let's see what we got here. Mike, while I'm ecstatic at the prospect of new blood atop the heavyweight division, I had to tear this matchup off my fridge. How Jon tore his pec off the bone. Silver linings. Yes, there are some silver linings here. What blew my mind was I see that a lot of folks out there are more ecstatic about the new matchup than they were the old one. And you also have to, my heart goes out to all of the fans who purchased tickets to Madison Square Garden for UFC 295, hoping to see Jon Jones defend his title. And now that isn't going to be the case. They're not going to be able to see that happen. That personally, for me, happened a few UFCs ago at Madison Square Garden. I had tickets for Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz, and that was a fight that ended up getting canceled. And you know what's funny? You know what we got there? We got Daniel Cormier taking on Derek Lewis in the main event of that fight card. So it's interesting. Remember, I believe it was Herb Brooks who said, "Great moments are born from great opportunity." One of my favorite quotes. And that is the case here. Mike. All right, let's see what else we got here. So interesting news that broke recently today, and we have a lot of matchups to look forward to. I'm looking through that UFC 295 card, refreshing the topology page here where we have Prochazka versus Pereira at the top of the card. That's scheduled for 5 rounds. Wow, that should be one hell of a matchup at 205 pounds, where you see Pereira on the hunt here for a title, and he's taking on Prochazka, who's coming off of that brutal. I keep hearing about the most horrific shoulder injury the UFC has ever seen, but I'd like to hear what the details were of that fight. And then, if you notice, when Dana White was revealing that um, the new fight card, the Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern fight, there seemed to be a missing link. I'm not sure if that fight got pulled or if someone forgot to write in the opponent's name, but interesting how that unfolded. And then we have Benoit Saint Denis taking on Matt Frivola. You talk about fannies in the seats. I suspect they will be at UFC 295. I know a lot of folks are looking forward to that fight card. I believe it's November 11th. So fascinating matchups. Now, let's get into this Sergei Pavlovich, Tom Aspinall matchup. So Aspinall apparently is coming off the couch, but I am not 100% convinced that that's the case. I believe that he has been training in the hopes of getting a fight in sooner or later. This is Tom Aspinall we're speaking about, and we know he's very fluid on his feet and that he does have solid jiu-jitsu. And we haven't seen the cardio tested of Tom Aspinall. Both of these fighters, Pavlovich is a fighter who's been burning. It's almost been like a warm knife through butter, as my friend Bennett from Commando used to say. A warm knife slicing through butter for Sergei Pavlovich with these first round finishes. Time and time again, he's just been annihilating opponents. And we've seen the footage of him putting in some work on the beach. I believe that was at the Santa Monica Pier under the bridge. Man, I don't expect that fight to go the distance. And you look at the odds here. Now, can Tom Aspinall extend this fight? Because I believe that he's going to have to get through an initial barrage and an onslaught that Sergei Pavlovich will bring to him. It's interesting, the takes I'm seeing across my timeline here. I'm seeing folks who are have a very strong opinion that Sergei Pavlovich is going to flatline Tom Aspinall. And I'd like to know in the comments section, how do you feel about this matchup, this new matchup? Do you believe that it's better than the original, the Stipe Miocic, Jon Jones matchup? Me personally, I was looking forward to that fight, not only because I had money on Jon Jones, but also because we were going to get some questions answered. We had the greatest heavyweight champion of all time in Stipe Miocic, who was taking on Jon Jones, the greatest fighter of all time. And we would have at least had our answer there. Now, if Miocic ends up waiting for this fight, he'll be 42 years of age. And Father Time, it's very difficult to outrun Father Time. We've seen folks try to use pharmaceuticals to accomplish that task, and they have yet to successfully fend off Father Time. That's very difficult to do that. So I don't believe that this was in Stipe Miocic's best interest to not offer his services. And we have a chef here offering his advice. He says that it's difficult to have a strong opinion that one side is clear and definitive value. A fight I will much prefer to watch rather than wager on. Well, I appreciate your work in the kitchen and your work as a chef, and keep doing everything that you do. The Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives TV show, one of my all-time favorites. Thank you for your work there. And I agree with you to a certain extent. I believe that someone is going to walk away winning that fight inside the distance. I personally lean towards Tom Aspinall because of his more well-roundedness. But like I tweeted a few minutes ago, the better fighter and more well-rounded fighter, the fighter with the higher level of skill set, does not necessarily always win. We've seen that happen many, many, many times throughout the course of time. A tale as old as time, really, where fighters, even though they may be the better fighter, they don't necessarily win. There's so many other variables that come into the equation here. And this particular fight should be fascinating. And then Jon Jones, think about him too. He is going to have to sit on the shelf for 8 months here. He's going to have to wait this out. He'll have to rehab, and then he'll have to get into fight shape. And what's interesting about Jon Jones is he's not necessarily the fighter who's going to sit back and take a fight immediately coming off of an injury. You rarely see Jon Jones take these short notice fights as a champion, and also as a contender, etc. It hasn't happened, and I don't expect Jon Jones to just hop right in there. He's probably going to make sure that he's 100%. You look at the fight against Chael Sonnen that he did not take, and that was on short notice because he wasn't ready for that specific opponent, and he knew that Chael was going to bring with him a wrestling heavy game plan. And look what happened in that particular bout, though. When they eventually locked horns, you saw that Jon Jones beat Chael Sonnen at his own game. So let's see here. We've got big ups. Yes, I appreciate you tuning in today. Thank you. It means the world to me. And this is one thing that I really enjoy doing. This is a passion of mine, and breaking down fights one fight at a time. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel and also like the video, that would be a big help for us. But right now we're talking Sergei Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall and how they match up. And you have the fleet-footedness of Tom Aspinall and the marauder-esque style of Sergei Pavlovich. Back in 2018, you saw Alistair Overeem, not Econo-Reem, Overeem taking on Sergei Pavlovich, and Econo-Reem, or sorry, for that matter, Overeem destroyed Sergei Pavlovich in one round. And I believe that Pavlovich right now, he is still a young fighter. You look at up and down his resume, that was the first time he really saw adversity. Let's see. Oh, wow. LP has a statement that he'd like to make. Let's see. What are your thoughts on handicappers who recommend risking 30 to 50% or 30 to 50 units on an event on a regular basis? I personally believe that that is a recipe for disaster. Even though you may be successful at some point there, if folks are telling you they are setting themselves up for potentially losing 30 to 50% of their bankroll on any given night, and that is a dangerous proposition. I don't recommend that. I would much rather folks stick to keeping it between 5 and 7% of their bankroll per a fight card. Remember, if you have 12 fights to look forward to, you want to try to pick out those 3 to 5, possibly up to 7 solid spots on a card. If there are 12 fights on a fight card, that you don't necessarily have to go to your way to risk and bet 15 different props and money lines, etc. Of course, that's impossible when you have only 12 fights, unless you're using an ARB as a way out. But I personally believe that it's best to pick the 3 to 5 best spots on a specific card and then shoot for it. And also, you have to remember, after the fight card ends, where are you going to be as far as on the side of things? Are you going to be on the winning side or the losing side? And also, we have to understand implied probability, etc. So, not to go on a tangent here, but that's something that I've always taken a liking to and tried to really work into my game plan. Oh wow, look at this. Here we go. LP is back at it again. Thank you for chiming in here again. I appreciate you, my brother. How often do you recompound your unit size? Is it after every event, or you personally like to adjust after a milestone? I believe folks should do that on an individual basis. Remember, you have to work within a bankroll that you're comfortable with. So personally, I believe that there should be a milestone that you set where you adjust. If you are recompounding after each event, it does get complicated, and for folks who are trying to tell you, that is something that can be difficult to stay on top of on a regular basis. So if you're doing it every let's say you're reaching 150 units of profit, that's an area where you could adjust, or 100 units or 115 units, etc. Let's see. Do you think November fight schedule for the UFC is scant? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I believe the Sao Paulo card is a great fight card. I'm really looking forward to that. And then also um the the Brennan Allen the Brendan Allen Paul Craig fight card is something that I've been eyeing up also. I don't have any bets out yet for that card, but it's a fight card that I've been really eyeing up. So looking forward to that fight card as well. Excellent question. Do you believe in closing line value, trying to get the best number, or do you prefer trying to get the best possible read and place bets later on in the week? Wow. LP, you're coming in with some excellent questions here, and I'll be frank with you, and I'll give you a sincere answer. I believe that it always helps to solidify closing line value, especially if you're trying to arb. But of course, that might get you limited at certain books. But on the other side of the coin here, it depends on what your motivations are. So if you are if you're out there selling picks, of course, folks want to have you giving their takes, have you locking in bets, etc., so that they can tail you. And of course, that will move the line. And then you also have to think about sometimes there are some days during the week, especially I've noticed closer to fight time on Saturday morning or Saturday midday, you'll find that the best line is available. And granted, if you are a handicapper selling picks, etc., people will have tailed you much earlier in the week, and that line may have moved. The ebb and flow of the fight line throughout the week may have changed. But I've personally found that some days and sometimes you will get the best possible line on fight day. So take that into consideration. But personally, in my heart of hearts, I do prefer trying to get the best possible read. If you look at the way that I typically handle my business, I'm hitting bets at 62% clip throughout the course of my entirety of handicapping fights, and that's dating all the way back to early 2017. So, and that's extremely high compared to many of the other handicappers in this space. But with that comes risk, and yes, I have a tendency to gravitate towards who I think will win the fight. And obviously, I'm trying to ascertain value in that as well. So I do a lot of work behind the scenes to come to those conclusions. And I believe that a mix of both, of course, obtaining some closing line value, yes, that people will say you've done your job if you've solidified closing line value. But I don't necessarily believe that is the whole story. I believe that there's a lot more to it. You obviously want to see what happens inside the octagon between the two fighters who are competing against one another. So that's important. Let's see. As in scant for the fans, not scant for betting. Not necessarily. I'll be honest. The Paul Craig the Paul Craig, Brendan Allen fight card. Personally, I'm really looking forward to that main event. I can't wait for that main event. I believe that Brendan Allen, he has been a doctor and Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so to speak. We've seen the best and the worst out of him. He's come in here and he's been brutally knocked out by Curtis, and we've also seen him brutalized by Sean Strickland. Granted, that look at how that fight has aged, seriously. But then you also have seen him fight some legitimate, dangerous fighters, and he's come out the other side victorious. And then you have Paul Craig, who the drop down 185 pounds seems to have served him well. So I'm really looking forward to that. Not only the main event, but there are other fights on that fight card. And I'm going to take a look here at upcoming fights while we have some additional fight card discussion in the comments section here. Let's see what we got. November 17th. You're right. There are only a couple of fight cards, and I'll be honest, I'm not very my antennas aren't necessarily up for this Tyson Fury Francis Ngannou fight that's coming up. So yeah, Michael Morales versus Jake Matthews, that doesn't necessarily do it for me. But you know what does? The Jordan Levitt Chase Hooper matchup. That should be a very fascinating matchup. And then you have Luana Pinheiro taking on Amanda Ribas. That's a fight that I'm looking forward to as well. And then you have Eileen Perez taking on Lucy Pudilova. That should be an interesting fight as well. You've got a striker and a grappler going against one another. And then, oof, man, the UFC 296, man, I cannot wait for that. Let's see. We've got LP here. Do you have a network of people you discuss fights with? And if so, how much do you take their reads into consideration when making your bets? I typically will do my own homework, and I believe in as long as you have a trusted process and you understand implied probability, and you have a winning process, that you're in good standing. But I don't hate on folks who converse with one another to try to put themselves in the best possible situation to win. Which lines prior to fights did you think were too wide? Zhang versus Lemos, Wood versus Naimov. James, excellent question. Now, are we including the referee in the handicapping process there? Because Nathaniel Wood versus Naimov, that was one fight where, whoa, my goodness gracious, you had, I believe, 4 separate fouls that really swayed the fight. And that was something that really stood out to me there. And then you have Zhang versus Lemos. That is a fight that, I mean, we saw down the stretch how dominant Weili Zhang was. And Lemos, she fought tooth and nail. And wasn't able to get it done there. But yes, that was a very wide line. And you saw Amanda Lemos, she did have the ability to crack and could have potentially caused Weili Zhang some issues, but she didn't. Let's see. After having a losing weekend of bets, how do you go about handling the losses? Because even as a seasoned pro, the losses hit hard and you have to sit with that for a week. Oof, I love that. You are striking piercing straight to the core here. That's a excellent question. I personally, especially for the fighters, think about the fighters who, after a loss, they have to sit on the sidelines for 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year. Even what if there's an injury and they're coming off of a loss? They have to let that marinate within themselves for over a year, knowing that they are who they are and they have to come out and prove themselves time and time again. So I think that you obviously don't want to overextend yourself, don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're risking more than you should, and everything in moderation. That's my motto. One fight at a time. That's a very, very good question. You're on LP. You're bringing it. You're bringing your A game today. I appreciate these questions. All right, so we're not including the ref prior knowledge. So, yeah, I do believe that there was value on Lemos in that fight against Weili Zhang. And as far as the Nathaniel Wood Naimov fight, I mean, you clearly saw that Nathaniel Wood was the much better fighter. There's no doubt in my mind watching that fight as it took place, and it being in Abu Dhabi, that's one thing, but also the get up game for Nathaniel Wood, the takedowns, the fence grabbing that we saw take place, the multiple groin strikes that we saw take place. There were a lot, and the glove grabbing during the last 15 seconds or so. That was as bad as it gets without a point being taken away. So that was really tough to watch. Are you a fan of Dan Tom? Dan's been putting out a lot of work for quite some time. And I've followed his work over at MMA Oddsbreaker. I've seen him on the come up, and I have a lot of respect for Dan going out there one event at a time, putting his research out there. That's yeah, he's one of the old school, one of the OGs of the fight game. And as far as my work, you can find me third party tracked at betmma.tips. I've been putting out my work since 2016 over at Capper Tech. That's one of the sites that I originally started tracking my bets until I found betmma.tips, and then that was 2017. We got things rolling over there. Let's see. How do you choose your unit sizing for your bets? Do you do it on value or confidence, or a mix of both? And how many units do you want risked on a particular event? Excellent question. Excellent question. I try to keep my bets. I try to stay under 7 units per event unless something really jumps off the page at me. There have been times, if you look, I average about 6.5 to 6.75 units risked per event. And let's see, as far as unit sizing, do you choose your bets on value or confidence? I personally, it is a bit of a mix of both. I do rate confidence a little bit more highly, because I'll be honest, this is somebody who takes 20 to 30 minutes, or sorry, 20 to 30 hours. I typically research 20 to 30 hours per card, per event, between getting the graphics ready for the morning breakdown show, and also for each individual video that I put out, I typically spend 2 to 3 hours of time getting everything ready. So I want to make sure that, and here's the key. Here's another. This is a very important point. It's okay to pass on a bet. If you spend time like 2-3 hours researching, and you feel like you haven't achieved the outcome, like, oh, this is definitely the side I have to bet this side, or there's value here, or there's no value here, you have to be okay with passing on a play. I think that is a lesson I've learned throughout the course of time. You don't want to force any action. Granted, that can be a teachable moment for yourself. That's something that we're all maturing, and that's something that I'll say, just being humble throughout the course of time here, and even here now, right as I'm chatting with you, this is a humbling experience. I'm being brutal. I'm being honest with everyone, that it's okay to pass on a play. That is well within reason here. So I only make bets when I have conviction on a play. How often do you consider a camp change in your picks? I do. I consider that. That's definitely a piece of the puzzle. Not a big piece, but it's a part of the puzzle. And I'll tell you this, that if a fighter has a second camp or a second fight in a camp, I usually put a little bit more stock into that, because they've believed in the process themselves. And we're talking about 12 weeks plus getting acclimated to the tutelage of whatever camp they're in, whether it be ATT or Fortis or Team Alpha Male or you name it. That's a great question. Let's see. Are narratives important when it comes to MMA betting? Like James above, I'm just a fan, but I'd like to know your process. There are certain narratives that you can run with. There are certain narratives that you can just brush aside. I will say that one of the narratives, like retirement, if a fighter has come out and said that this is their last fight, I will put some more stock into that. You look up and down retirement of fighters. I mean, barring like Chris Lytle and a few others have been successful in their final fight, but most fighters fail in retirement fights. Usually they have other obligations outside of the octagon. So that's a really good question. But there are so many different narratives. Fighters moving up a weight class, fighters moving down a weight class. I really, if it's an older fighter moving down a weight class, that typically raises a red flag for me. I'll be honest. Let's see. How much do you factor outside factors such as Conor doing drinking and what have you? McGregor's a fade as far as I'm concerned moving forward here. You look at Michael Chandler and what's going on with that potential fight in USADA and how Conor has been able to strong arm his way into a position here of strength. It's flabbergasting, to be honest. Michael Chandler, he's what, 36, 37 years of age. Fighters have a short shelf life, and he's wasting time banking on a fight against Conor McGregor that he wants to come to fruition, and that might not necessarily happen. So I'm worried about him. And also, as far as McGregor goes, we know, I mean, as you get older, I mean, this is a fighter who came up. We've seen him at featherweight. Now he's like a enormous. He looks like he could fight at 185 pounds. He's carrying so much extra weight. It's disturbing to see this. But hey, he's happy, right? Or maybe he's not happy. I can't answer that for the young man. But he's been every fight card. It seems like he chimes in. He has something to say, and I'd like to see him fight sooner than later. Let's see. To parlay to my question about camp change, what about fighters adding new coaches during each camp? That is a good question. I will say this. The Fight Ready camp, they seem to be getting the most out of their fighters as I continue to watch, and I watch fight camps evolve. Fighters who go to Fight Ready seem to do well, whether it be Weili Zhang, Davison Figueiredo, etc. It seems like the coaches there will be brutally honest with their fighters, and I think that really needs to happen. You need an honest assessment. Even, I'll be honest, John McDessie, the way he came in against Jamie Malarkey, I wasn't expecting McDessie to perform as well as he did, and he did pretty well there. So I do put some stock into new coaches. Let's see. Do you consider? All right, let's see. John Wood. Man, good question. I want to see Weili Zhang back in there as soon as possible. Let's see. We've got some more comments here. What are your thoughts and strategy behind parlays? Do you ever do long shot lottery ticket ones? Also, what's your ideology on 2-team parlays? Do you prefer play singles, even big favorites? I'm not a parlay guy. Never have been. It's something that I have avoided for the entirety of my handicapping. And I know folks say you could be smart about it. You could pick your spots as far as parlays go. But one thing you have to really consider is if one leg of that parlay, like let's say, for instance, you parlay Jon Jones and you're banking on him winning and another favorite, you have to really believe that these are going to hit and that they have value. And I don't like compounding things to create value. I believe that you're better off playing these straight. And yes, I will play big favorites straight. I believe that also will limit the losses in the long run. If you play a parlay and a leg or two, or one. It only takes one leg not hitting to crash a parlay. So that's the danger zone. And I know folks, I mean, you look at, look, here's a 8-leg parlay or a 3 or 5-leg parlay. Look what you got to do to get. People are obsessed with the prize. They're not obsessed with the journey. And that's something that I've been really trying to do. Do you believe there's corruption within the UFC when it comes to reffing, judging, matchmaking? I do believe that the UFC is trying to push certain fighters. I'll say that. But as far as the judging goes, I could see the judging, especially if they're in a particular time zone and they're in a home country where they have a big time fighter in their octagon trying to accomplish a task. That, yes, things do occasionally get favored that way. It used to be that way in boxing, where you had to beat the champ to become the champ. You had to really do something extra to take the belt from a champ. We don't have that mentality and scoring system in the UFC. Thank God we don't, to be honest, because boxing has really taken a turn for the worst in recent years. But also, as far as reffing, I don't believe that there's corruption there, but you do have refs who, I'll be honest, I don't believe they know what they're doing out there, and it's disturbing. You should not, this is a key component that I need to mention here, is that you shouldn't be able to get multiple fouls off in the first round and not get a point deducted. Groin strikes, multiple groin strikes, etc. That's disturbing. Do you think James Krause was a good coach? I do believe that he had good qualities. And by the way, what the hell's happened with James Krause? I haven't heard a peep since this whole thing went down. I feel like it's been over a year, right? Hasn't it? It's been a while. No James Krause news. Interesting. How do you feel about a fighter being pushed? Do you root against them as a fan? Great question. Great question. When it comes to Rosas, I mean, when Christian Rodriguez fought him, I remember pulling for Rodriguez in that fight. You got Paddy Pimblett. I mean, is there anybody pushed more than Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann? I do root against them, I got to be honest. And Tony Ferguson, though, is he going to be the guy to stop the train for Paddy Pimblett? I don't necessarily believe he is. It's sad. It's sad that it's come to this, but man, looking forward to that fight. I believe that's at UFC 296. There are about a lot of fights that I'm looking forward to. And by the way, if anybody tells you that Brandon Royval is not capable of coming through as an underdog against Alejandro Pantoja, I think that's not right. I believe that Royval's in that fight, and that's something I firmly believe in. I'm really looking forward to that fight at UFC 296. Let's see. Also, do you believe some fighters have more resources than others that gives them an edge in competition? I do. Yes. Who was it? Marlon Chito Vera recently shared that if you have $20,000 or so, you can bypass the USADA testing, and that may be the case. I can't vouch for that. I haven't been in the back rooms to see, what actually takes place and what they're looking for. Oh, you're talking about coaches, sparring partners, training areas. Yes, I believe those are huge assets. And then you talk about a weight cut. I remember watching fighters rehydrate after weigh-ins, and just how the game has changed so much. I've been around the fight game since, gosh, it's been literally multiple decades, and I've seen a lot, and I've experienced a lot, and I am looking forward to the future. I will say that. The arrow's pointed up, though, as far as mixed martial arts and UFC, and this is a cathartic experience for me. It's a labor of love, and I appreciate James, LP, Ryo, etc. Everybody who's been in the chat today, Jared. Thanks for taking the time to post these comments. I appreciate it. I've tried to respond to everybody, and want to have I want to wish you a tremendous rest of the week as we ramp up. Remember, next weekend we have UFC Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, looking forward to that one. And go get what's yours. Have a great rest of your week. Hey, well, look at this. We're closing in on 40 minutes, so it's just about time. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Go get what's yours.